Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing one of my favorite Martin Scorsese films, one of the films that was very inspirational to me early on in my movie watching days when I was exploring new genres and nationalities outside of American cinema. That is My Voyage to Italy. And I have created my own case here because I don't know where my other one went to, but originally I bought this from an FYE, I believe, and I have the 2 DVD discs. And what I did was I just kind of made a little cover from some of the movies mentioned in the film. So if you haven't heard of this before, this is hours and hours of Martin Scorsese talking about his experience with Italian cinema growing up and ultimately how that influenced him as a director. And it is absolutely fascinating if you are into the art of movie making, if you're into Scorsese, if you're into Italian cinema, foreign cinema, Criterion cinema, any of those things. This is a much watch, and like I said, it is one of my favorite of his. So he starts out talking a little bit about his experience with movies like this. He discusses being in New York City in these small rooms, like a little apartment, and there would be a tiny TV, and members of the family would come around and they would just watch together these old black and white, poor quality prints of famous Italian movies. He discusses Italian neorealism, which if you're unfamiliar with that came out of traditions and directors such as Roberto Rossellini, who he discusses quite a bit in here. And he gives you examples and sort of guides you through what that whole movement was about and why that whole movement happened. And the way he does it, you get to experience his life growing up as a director, his mind, what it was like growing up as a director, as a little kid, how that kind of influenced him later on. And you sort of see the purpose and the context of neorealism. And it's absolutely fascinating, in part because not only is this just intellectually stimulating, but Scorsese's voice is so pleasant to listen to. And his love for movies pours onto the screen. And it's very likely that you'll learn more about movies watching an hour of this than you would just reading books even from the library about movies. I mean, he is so insightful in this. And I wanted to point out some of the pieces that really stuck with me and some parts that I really like without kind of giving it all away. He does a little bit of commentary on how the Bergman-Rossellini scandal went down, which if you're not familiar with that, you will be. I like that scene. I love how he does this really thoughtful commentary on The Flowers of St. Francis, which is a great Italian film about monks who wander the world trying to help people, and the respect he has for those characters. Part of something I want to mention here, if you've heard that Scorsese can only make gangster movies, that's just from people that don't know what they're talking about. You'll really see that that side of Scorsese, and I think you're going to enjoy it if you haven't heard of that side. He talked a little bit about a film I haven't seen by De Sica called Shoe Shine, and his take on the poverty of these children as they're imprisoned. It really makes you want to see that film and a number of others. He talks about old silent epics and how they influenced pieces of his life. One part I found particularly interesting was he was like, it didn't occur to me that I might watch a fantasy, almost like throwaway Western, and then the next, in the evening, I might watch a great Italian film in a terrible print, on a small TV. It's just fascinating to see how he developed as a director and how he contextualizes these other directors and what they were probably thinking. There were moments that he would go over a scene and show you clips, and he would just throw a sentence out, and I would be like, I never thought about the film that way. And it made me want to rewatch every single film I've seen from the documentary. I've seen a good number of them, and some of them I've seen pieces of. But I mean, it will just sort of spike your interest in these topics. It's really cool. My favorite film in this entire tradition that he goes through, and probably if you've clicked on this, my guess would be this might be a favorite of yours, is La Dolce Vita. And I've seen that movie many times. I've talked about how that was one of the very first, Italian movies that really got me into non-English films. And gosh, like I actually went back and just made sure I knew exactly how he said this. But he said that the film was a bold panoramic vision, an enormous cinematic fresco teeming with non-stop activity. And the love for that film that comes through, the way he explains its themes and other movies, it just really makes you want to get out the giant Fellini Criterion pack, which I often show off on this channel, and just get to watching. I mean, it's so, you know what I love about it too? You could watch 20, 30 minutes of it, and then you could click pause. You could watch a few hours, click pause. Because he's so well scaffolded, because one thing he does in there is like, he'll show you a clip of a film, talk a little bit about it, and then he'll return to it to kind of give you some time to process the images or the film movement or whatever it is, and return to it. So that I've noticed as I was watching this, like I was really absorbing the information, and just kind of like as a teacher, I appreciated how he was able to sort of scaffold that for me. Another thing I meant to mention this about La Dolce Vita, he discusses how, like, for example, and he does this with other films he evaluates, but like how the Cold War influenced, people's perception of the film or the characters in the film, and the actual like historical context of fascism, for example, and how that influenced parts of Rossellini's filmography. There are other things that are fascinating. He'll talk about the realism versus the more fantastical films, and like you'll get this complete picture of a director who, in my opinion, has been the most powerful of all directors. Scorsese is one of my favorites because no one has ever done what he has done for movies. Not only is he a great director in his own right, but a movie like, I almost called this La Dolce Vita, My Voyage to Italy, which does discuss that film. For him to just celebrate this rich history of cinema and restore it, this, to me, is as good or as important as any film he's ever made. This would be in my top 10 films. If I do a top 10 Scorsese film list, this will be in it. Because it's entertaining to listen to, it's informative, it's historically, rich in detail, and most of all, like one of the great things about it is it actually like gives you a watch list of films that you can go through. So if you're kind of new to, like, let's say the Criterion Collection, you could just watch this movie and you'd have like a stack of stuff, to watch and listen to. And it's also good if you just kind of want to like chill to some film vibes and kind of rest. This would be a great thing, even if you didn't watch it, if you even just like listen to it, you could probably use it as a tool to fall asleep to, because he has such a warm tone, such an inviting presence on the screen. Remember, Scorsese in his own right is a great actor. So for he in his cameo in Dreams, or his small role in his own film Taxi Driver, for example, like he's a good, he understands how to perform on the stage, and so he's not boring. He's constantly insightful, and I love this film so much. So those are just some of the highlights from what I enjoy about it. And this is a film I hope to return to over the years, every so often. Like I said, I had to make my own case again because, I actually threw a picture of Goodfellas in there for good measure, but I didn't discuss all the films he goes through. Obviously, there are others, but I wanted to give you a little taste of what you would be getting into with My Voyage to Italy. And I do believe it's kind of a hidden gem because I never hear it talked about, ever. People talk about, Raging Bull and Goodfellas, rightfully so, and all these great films, but I never hear this one mentioned. So I wanted to throw that out there for people that are into these kind of movies. If you did find this review to be helpful, or you plan on watching this, or you at least want to give it a look, if you could do me a favor and give my video a like, that will help grow the channel. Consider subscribing if you haven't, because I cover lots of topics like this, Criterion films, Westerns, just tons of movie-related stuff. And we will see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.